What if the exact feeling that you call true love is actually, well, a psychological trap designed to make you totally miserable?
Right. It's a terrifying thought, but it's, incredibly common.
Yeah, today we're looking at why following your gut in romance is historically and just mathematically a really terrible idea. Because usually, I mean, when we talk about making a major life decision like buying a house or choosing a career, there's this expectation of rigorous, rational research.
Absolutely. You run the numbers, you check the market.
Exactly. You make your pros and cons list, but the second you step into the world of romance, you're suddenly supposed to just, throw the spreadsheets out the window.
Yeah.
Society basically tells you to just follow your instincts.
Right. The whole when you know kind of thing.
Yes, you lock eyes with someone, your heart races, and your gut screams that you found the one. And it feels like absolute magic. Right up until it doesn't, and you're sitting there 3 years later, totally baffled, wondering why your flawless intuition betrayed you yet again.
It's really the ultimate romantic paradox. We're taught to trust our feelings implicitly. Yet for so many of us, those very feelings lead us straight into deeply confusing, painful, and repetitive dynamics. We basically treat our love lives like a blindfolded lottery, just hoping our intuition draws the winning ticket.
Which is exactly why we're decoding this problem today. We're doing a deep dive into the mechanics of attraction, and we're pulling from some brilliant excerpts in a book called How to Find Love by the School of Life.
It's a fantastic source, really eye-opening.
It really is. So the mission for this deep dive is to figure out why we're drawn to the specific people we're drawn to, explain the underlying logic behind why those mysterious instincts so often set us up for failure, and map out how we can upgrade from a chaotic relationship of instinct into what the source calls a mature psychological relationship.
To understand why we struggle so much with finding the right partner, we first have to take a step back. You know, Look at the cultural water we're swimming in. We tend to assume that following our hearts is just baseline human nature, like it's a timeless reality.
But it's not, right?
Not at all. The system of dating we use today is incredibly new.
Yeah, because for the vast majority of human history, people engaged in what were essentially marriages of reason. Love was absolutely not the goal. It certainly wasn't the starting point.
Right. You married for status or merging family land.
Exactly. Financial stability, or just to have someone with, complementary household skills. You didn't expect to be intensely passionate about them. You just hoped you could tolerate them over breakfast for the next 40 years. And you rarely even had to find them yourself. Your family vetted them based on highly objective, practical criteria.
But then we see this massive cultural pivot in Europe during the mid-18th century with the rise of Romanticism. And this movement essentially declared that all those practical considerations, the wealth, the property, were not just irrelevant, but actually mercenary and cold.
Right, like it was shameful to care about that stuff.
Exactly. The new ultimate ideal became the marriage of feeling. Suddenly, the only acceptable reason to marry someone was an overwhelming, instinctual, emotional pull. This mysterious visitation of feeling became the sole trusted guide for selecting a lifelong partner.
So what does this all mean? We are essentially running a global social experiment that is only about 260 years old. In the grand scheme of human history, we're like toddlers trying to pilot a commercial jet using only our feelings. We are operating a system we barely understand.
And the statistics paint a very clear picture of how difficult this experiment has been. While the romantic ideal makes for incredible art and cinema, the reality is much harsher. When you analyze the data on modern marital unhappiness and divorce rates, the inevitable conclusion is that raw instinct is actually a highly unreliable compass for long-term contentment.
So we shouldn't just trust our gut.
Well, the solution isn't to go back to arranged marriages for land, but we certainly can't afford to let our unconscious drives steer the ship without some oversight.
Right, so if romanticism demands that we blindly trust our gut, we need to put that gut feeling under a microscope. Let's look at why we're so incredibly choosy. I mean, you might meet someone who's perfect on paper, kind, successful, emotionally stable, and your brain just says, I'm not feeling a spark.
Yeah, the classic missing spark.
Exactly. But then you meet someone totally chaotic, and you are fiercely drawn to them. The source breaks this choosiness down into 3 specific drives. Let's look at the first one. The instinct to seek out completion.
This drive is rooted in the fact that every single one of us is, well, radically incomplete. We all lack certain qualities in our characters. You might be missing a sense of calm, or you might lack creativity, or maybe assertiveness.
Right.
Unconsciously, we recognize these gaps in our own psychological makeup. So when we encounter someone who possesses those exact complementary qualities, we experience a powerful magnetic attraction. We're basically seeking to make good on a defect in ourselves through someone else.
I love the architectural analogy the source uses to explain this. They compare it to two radically different spaces. Like, imagine Vienna's Peterskirch.
Oh, yeah, the really ornate one.
Yeah, it's highly dramatic, extravagant, filled with gold and statues. A person who feels a painful lack of exuberance in their own life, someone who feels, overwhelmed by their own rigidity, might walk into that church and find it breathtakingly beautiful. It offers what they lack.
Whereas someone whose mind is constantly racing with chaos and anxiety is going to be deeply moved by the St. Moritz Church in Augsburg,
Yeah.
which is stark, incredibly minimalist, and serene. We do the exact same thing with potential partners.
We hunt for the emotional architecture we're missing.
Exactly. A highly anxious person is naturally going to feel an intense spark with someone who projects an aura of impenetrable calm.
But it's not just about what we lack, right? It's also about what we hide.
Sure.
And that brings us to the second drive, the instinct for endorsement. We all have these lonely, oddball traits that most of the world just doesn't care about or maybe actively dismisses.
Right, the quirky stuff.
Yeah, like maybe you have a secret obsession with doing jigsaw puzzles that your highly intellectual friends mock. Or maybe you still kind of love hiding under the covers when you're stressed, just like you did as a kid.
And when we meet someone who intuitively understands those offbeat traits, who endorses them without making us explain or defend them, the attraction is immense. It feels like you've formed this intimate two-person conspiracy against the rest of the world.
It feels like magic. They're reading your soul, and your love for them is essentially gratitude for their ability to understand you without you having to spell everything out. But there's a deeper, more unconscious pull at work here, too, which the source identifies as the instinct for familiarity.
Yes, this is a big one.
The argument is that we are unconsciously drawn to people who recreate the emotional environment we experienced with our childhood caregivers. But wait, I have to push back here because the implication is that we are unconsciously trying to date our parents, and that is a deeply unnerving thought.
Oh yeah, it is a very common reaction to feel repelled by that idea.
Yeah.
But it requires an important clarification. You aren't seeking someone who looks or acts exactly like your parents in a literal sense.
Oh, yeah.
What you are seeking is a specific emotional quality. The affection we experience as children becomes our baseline definition of what love feels like. So in adulthood, when we find a partner who exhibits some of those same early dynamics, it registers in our nervous system as right. Emotionally speaking, it feels like we've finally come home.
Okay, that distinction makes it slightly less weird, but it's still intense. Because these three drives, seeking completion, finding endorsement, and returning to a familiar emotional home, they sound incredibly romantic on paper. You find your missing puzzle piece, your soul reader, but the source argues that if we leave these instincts unexamined, they're the precise mechanisms that cause our relationships to implode.
They turn into massive traps if we fail to apply psychological maturity to them. Let's look at the trap of the completion instinct first. You're drawn to someone because they have strengths you lack, but for that dynamic to actually be functional, two very unromantic things have to occur.
Which are?
You have to be willing to be taught, and they have to be willing to teach.
And human beings are notoriously terrible at both of those things. It's like buying a complicated, expensive piece of gym equipment. You buy it because you want the strength and the fitness it represents, but then you get the machine home and you realize it actually requires you to sweat and struggle and be uncomfortable to see any results.
Yeah, you start to hate the machine.
Exactly. In relationships, we love our partner's strengths from afar, but up close, we hate being corrected or molded. We end up feeling patronized by the very qualities we initially thought out.
And on the flip side, your partner might get frightened by your flaws, becoming a really terrible, impatient teacher. They might start delivering lessons with sarcasm because they're terrified they committed to someone who can't handle basic tasks. The dynamic quickly turns toxic.
Which brings us to the trap of the endorsement instinct. Because our partner understood that one weird thing about us without words early on, we develop the fatal expectation that they should be mind readers forever. We think, if you truly love me, I shouldn't have to explain why I'm upset.
What's fascinating here is how this specific trap leads to one of the most distinctive phenomena in romantic psychology, the sulk. We do not sulk with strangers or casual acquaintances. We reserve our sulks exclusively for the people we believe should understand us intuitively.
The anatomy of the sulk is so universally recognizable. Like you're at a party and your partner makes an offhand comment that unknowingly hurts your feelings. You sit in the passenger seat on the drive home in absolute radiating silence.
Oh, yes. The silent treatment.
And they ask what's wrong, and you just say nothing. You get inside, you lock yourself in the bathroom, and you just sit there. You are actively punishing them because you implicitly believe that a true lover should be able to read your pained soul right through the bathroom door panel.
It is a profound, albeit twisted compliment to the partner's supposed intuition, but it's utterly disastrous for the relationship's survival.
Mm.
We refuse to use words because explaining ourselves feels bureaucratic and unromantic. We want the magic of being known without the effort of actually communicating.
But the traps hidden within the familiarity instinct are arguably the most dangerous, because the affection we knew as children wasn't always warm, supportive, and fuzzy. If our parents were depressed, unreliable, or deeply chaotic, that becomes our internal baseline for love.
Right. And this creates what the source calls the repetition dynamic. If your childhood definition of love was tangled up with pain, neglect, or walking on eggshells, you're going to actively seek out partners who make you suffer in those specific familiar ways.
That's so self-destructive.
It is, but it's unconscious. You'll meet candidates who are genuinely kind, healthy, and available, and your instinct will just reject them. You won't consciously know why, so you'll use code words. You'll say, they're too nice, or they lack edge.
Wait, so when we say they lack edge, we really mean they are incapable of making me suffer in the exact way I need to suffer in order to feel like I am genuinely in love. That is wild. We are bypassing healthy relationships because they don't trigger our anxiety.
It's an unconscious compulsion to follow a path of unhappy love. In the realm of romance, we don't primarily want to be happy, we want to feel familiar.
Okay, so if that's the repetition dynamic, the opposite must also happen, right? Like, if you had a difficult childhood, you might run so fast in the other direction that you crash into a whole new set of problems. The source calls this the recoil dynamic.
Exactly. Let's say you had a parent who is incredibly intelligent, but also deeply cruel and prone to humiliating you. In the recoil dynamic, your instinct becomes utterly allergic to intelligence. You associate being smart with being dangerous.
So you overcorrect.
Right. As a result, you exclusively date people who are remarkably unintellectual. You successfully escape the bad trait, the cruelty, but you also cut yourself off from the good traits that would have actually nurtured you, like deep conversation or intellectual stimulation.
Okay, let's unpack this. If our romantic instincts are setting us up to resent our partners for trying to teach us, sulk in bathrooms, and repeatedly date people who trigger our childhood trauma, we have to figure out how to override this system without losing the spark. I mean, we can't just abandon our instincts entirely.
No, you can't abandon them, but you can train them. Upgrading from a relationship of instinct to a psychological relationship means doing the unromantic work of addressing these traps consciously.
For the instincts of completion and endorsement, the upgrade is straightforward, though, difficult to practice. We have to drop the ego. We must accept that we need to become willing, graceful students to our partners. If we chose them because they're calmer or more organized, we have to let them teach us those skills without taking it as a personal attack. And we have to utterly abandon the sulk.
We really do. We must accept that no human being, no matter how much they love us, can intuitively map the entire complexity of our minds. We have to use the cumbersome, frustrating medium of words to explain our feelings, our sadness, and our irritations. We just cannot punish a partner for failing to guess correctly.
But the familiarity traps feel much harder to solve. Like, in the heat of the moment, when you are caught in the repetition dynamic, say, your partner is acting distant and preoccupied, which triggers your childhood panic of being abandoned, your brain goes straight into fight or flight. The source says we need to move from a child reaction to an adult reaction. But how do you actually do that when the panic feels so primal?
The first step is recognizing that you probably can't change your core type. If you're drawn to somewhat distant people, you'll likely always feel a spark with them. What you can change is your reaction to the difficulty they present. When your partner is distant, the child reaction is catastrophic and attention-seeking. Notice me. If you don't notice me right now, it means I'm fundamentally unlovable.
So you basically regress to the powerlessness of being a 5-year-old.
Exactly. The adult reaction requires pausing that primal panic and replacing it with a boundaried perspective. You are busy, I am busy, and that is okay. Your distance is about your stress, not my worth. Or say your partner has a crushing, domineering intelligence that makes you feel small.
Right.
The child reaction is, I'm stupid and worthless. But the adult reaction is, you have a strong opinion, but I have my own valid perspective. You stop retreating into the fragility of the child you once were, and you handle the tricky behavior with the emotional resources of the adult you are now.
So you're still dating the tricky type, but you're disarming the trigger. But how do you solve the recoil dynamic? Let's say I'm dating someone who is hopelessly disorganized because my hyper-organized parent was a tyrant. Do I just resign myself to living in a messy house forever to avoid the trauma? Because eventually that messiness is going to drive me crazy, and I might start criticizing them using the exact same harsh tone my toxic parent used.
Which is the ultimate tragic irony of the recoil dynamic. We choose a partner specifically for their recoil qualities, and then we punish them for those exact same qualities using the techniques our difficult parent taught us.
Right.
The solution here isn't to just suffer in silence, it is a radical reframing of the situation. Instead of viewing your disorganized partner as a mess, or your non-intellectual partner as boring, you have to recognize the profound favor they are doing you.
Because they're actively sparing you the trauma you associate with those opposite traits.
Yes. You have to realize that your room for maneuver was limited by your history. You chose this person to protect yourself. So instead of criticizing their relaxed nature, you look at them and think, you are a calming presence in my life, and you are protecting me from the severe distress I would feel with someone highly methodical. This cognitive shift replaces punitive anger with genuine gratitude.
Okay, so let's assume you do all of this heavy lifting. You use your words, you manage your triggers with the adult reaction, you reframe your partner's flaws with gratitude, you find a great partner, and the love is reciprocated in a totally healthy way. The source points out something fascinating here. For many people, this is the moment they panic the most. True, reciprocated success feels even more terrifying than rejection.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, it stems from a place of deep self-suspicion. Because when someone actually starts to reciprocate our love, our instinct is often to view them with deep skepticism. We might accuse them of being dangerously naive or uncomfortably needy. We look at this person who loves us and we think they must be a fool, because if they actually saw the real, dark, flawed me, they would run for the hills.
The source connects this to a deep well of self-hatred, and they use the concept of extreme seduction. In the early days of dating, we hide all of our shadow sides. We hide our anxieties, our bad habits, our petty jealousies, and we present a flawless facade.
Right, the perfect version of ourselves.
Yeah, it's like landing a high-level executive job by submitting a completely fabricated resume. When the boss hires you, you don't admire their judgment. You assume the boss is gullible, and you spend every single day living in absolute terror that you're going to be found out. You can't enjoy the success because you know it's built on a performance.
We project our own self-suspicion onto the partner. When they show they depend on us, when they display a very normal human need for connection, we flinch. We label them needy because we're deeply uncomfortable with our own vulnerabilities. We think anyone who needs me must have terrible judgment.
And this inevitably leads to self-sabotage. Because somewhere in our past, the concept of hope became inextricably linked with danger. We learned that whenever we hoped for something good, like a parent staying or a situation improving, we were brutally disappointed. So as adults, when a relationship is actually going well, the primitive part of our brain starts flashing warning lights. We pick unnecessary fights, we become antagonistic on dates, we explode with unwarranted anger.
We deliberately try to scupper our chances of happy love to restore a familiar, albeit lonely, peace of mind. The unconscious logic is that we would rather control the destruction of the relationship ourselves than live with the agonizing vulnerability of hoping it works out and risking unexpected abandonment.
The stakes just feel too high. So how do we stop blowing up our own lives when things are actually going right?
We have to transition away from what the source calls sentimental love and actively embrace complex love. Sentimental love is the childish, perfectionist belief that we must be totally pure to deserve love, and that our partner must be flawless for us to love them.
Which is impossible.
Exactly. Complex love is the mature, secure realization that everyone, including you, is basically okay and also sometimes a bit awful. You are a bit weak, a bit sly, a bit foolish, but so is everyone else on the planet.
So we have to make the leap of faith to gradually drop the fake resume. We have to reveal our true, complex, messy selves to our partner, trusting that they actually aren't naive. They know human beings are flawed, they know we have shadows, and they love us anyway.
They've made peace with their own darker sides, and they're simply waiting for you to make peace with yours so you can both exist honestly in the relationship.
Bringing this all back to you, the listener, If you're out there wondering why your gut instincts keep leading you into the same frustrating relationship dynamics, remember that finding love is not about chasing a magical, infallible intuition. Your instincts are essentially just a heavily folded map of your childhood baggage. To build a lasting psychological relationship, you have to do the work. You have to become a willing student to your partner. You have to use words instead of expecting them to read your mind through a bathroom door. You have to manage your triggers with adult reactions. And you have to accept that it is perfectly okay to be a flawed human being loving another flawed human being. Love isn't a visitation, it is a skill.
It requires practice, patience, and a willingness to understand the mechanics of your own mind.
I want to leave you with one final, incredibly provocative thought from the source material to mull over. The author notes that fixation is not a manifestation of love, it is a calculated commitment to an obstacle to finding love. Think about that one who got away or that totally unavailable person you're hopelessly fixated on right now. Are you truly deeply in love with them? Are you truly in love with them, or is your brain just using them as a perfect safe obstacle? Are you using that intense fixation to protect yourself from the terrifying, messy vulnerability of a real, reciprocal relationship where you might actually have to let someone see the real you? It's definitely something to think about the next time your gut tells you that you found the one.